So what I love about Angela is I just feel like she's such a natural healer, and she's really passionate about helping parents, like partnering with parents to help them get to the root cause of their child's anxiety or, challenge with, depression or whatever that is, from a really holistic, and I know that word's used a lot, but a really holistic sense. And I can just, whenever you talk to her, you can just feel her passion. So I'm so excited to hear her topic today about the gut brain connection and the reset method. So if you want to just start, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story, and go ahead.
Thanks for that introduction. And I didn't have my camera on earlier. Here in Indiana, we're on our third day being snowed in at home, kids home from school, e-learning. So it was a little crazy, but I definitely caught most of the presenters and great information so far. I love it. So a little bit about my background. I graduated from Purdue. I've been a pharmacist for over 15 years, and I've had a variety of pharmacist jobs. I worked in a hospital for 3 years where I was implementing clinical programs. And then most of my career, for 12 years, I was in the VA, working in ambulatory care. And then the last 2 years, I've been working part-time in long-term care as a pharmacist, just so that I had more space and flexibility to work on my functional medicine practice, which is what I'm really passionate about. And then, just kind of a fun fact, I live on a farm in Indiana. I'm married and have 2 kids, a dog, or dogs, cats, and then a whole herd of cattle. So there's really never a dull moment around here. Wow. So always something going on.
So do you name them? Do you name the cattle, or are you just like, oh, cattle A, B, C?
Yeah, we name some of them, like the ones that my kids, they show at 4-H and they get really attached to. We name those, but we don't name all the other ones.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Freezer, because that would be kind of.
Yeah. You don't want to get too attached. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but we definitely have our favorites. So, yeah. So the way I ended up in functional medicine, like probably most people and a lot of things in life, it wasn't really a direct path, but there was multiple things that kind of converged to bring me there. So from a professional perspective, like so many pharmacists that we talk about today, I was getting burned out in my job. And the funny thing is, I thought I had my dream job. This was my job at the VA, what I really wanted. And I did love my patients. And I was really fortunate that I had one-on-one appointments, that I got to spend time with them. But there was just so much overhead pressure from management, so much lack of flexibility and scheduling. It really left me wanting more. But my favorite thing about that job was really talking to my patients, getting to know them, hearing their story. And that really has served me well, the lessons I learned, because really until people feel heard and their concerns are addressed, they're not going to be willing to work on like their diabetes or whatever they were there to see me for. So that was really helpful, kind of that base. But even though I loved my patients there, I still felt like something was missing. Like I wanted a new challenge. I even took a job as a supervisor because I wanted to try something different. I tried to convince myself that professionally that was the right step, that was the next right thing to do. But really, I was just scared to leave my comfort zone, which included health insurance for my family and a paycheck every 2 weeks. It was really scary to think about leaving that. So, this was thoughts I'd been having, probably 2 to 3 years. I've been thinking about that. So I continued on this path as a supervisor for a while until kind of a blessing in disguise came along. And I really had no option but to leave my job for a more flexible schedule. So shortly after I started working as a supervisor, my son started middle school and the anxiety took over. So I don't know, he's at that age, the hormones, the social pressures, really weren't able to identify anything specifically. He was always kind of my worrier and my anxious child, but we had managed fairly well into that point. And then something happened, the anxiety just got so severe, he refused to go to school for months. And so we knew we had to make some changes. So any of you that are parents can probably relate. You would do anything to help your child. So as a parent and as a healthcare professional, it was so difficult for me to not be able to figure out how to fix my son. And seeing him struggle was just so painful. I kept asking myself, why is he having so much anxiety? Unfortunately, he didn't have any adverse childhood experiences or trauma that we were aware of. So I just kept asking myself, why? Why is this happening? And this led me to working with a functional medicine practitioner to help identify the root cause of his anxiety. So she did food sensitivity testing, looked at mold toxicity and nutrient deficiencies. And those three things really kind of showed up as contributing to his anxiety. And it really, I loved that integrative approach, different from our typical pill for every ill model that we're used to. And not that it doesn't have a place in treatment, but I really loved, having some lifestyle modifications. I felt hope finally that there was some answers, there was some things we could do to work on to see improvement. But at the same time,
as a mom, it sounds like you felt really powerless at that time, right? Yes. And so like, finding those practitioners and learning and empowering yourself as a mom and as a pharmacist probably was a huge part of it. I can imagine. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, just trying to find answers because you felt so powerless. Like, how come I can't just get my kid to go to school? Like, how come I can't figure out how to make him feel better? And you really feel stuck. And it just got to the point where balancing, like trying to do a management job at work with, we were making progress, but appointments and counseling and the assessments. And then of course the meetings and phone calls from the school about what we were going to do about all this, something had to give. So finally at that point, I'd really been wanting a work from home job, something more flexible where I could be available to my family. And so I started researching ways like, how can you work from home as a pharmacist? And I started doing a lot more networking. And I discovered pharmacists were creating their own practice. They were working from home. They were helping clients. And I knew that was what I wanted. So we moved my son to a new school. I finally just took the big leap and quit my job at the VA. I started working part-time so that I would have my own schedule, could be flexible and help him, get healing, get the help he needed. But I knew that wasn't the final place for me. It was a bridge to get to my ultimate goal. And then shortly after leaving my job at the VA, the pandemic hit. And I was just so grateful that I had finally listened to myself and had a job where I was working from home. Because even though, a lot of us can relate, it was really hard to work from home and have your kids at home doing e-learning for all these months. But I can't even imagine still trying to go to work every day and take care of your kids in the evening. And I know so many of you did this and you really can't be commended enough. I mean, I don't know how all these working parents got through it. But that, to be able to see that immediate reward for me, like I stepped out of my comfort zone, I finally left that job, and then being in the right place when that hit, that I could be there for my family, but still work, it just felt so good.
Yeah. What was the number one feeling that you were looking for when you started? I know that you're like starting to transition into entrepreneurship, or, you started your business 2020, was it?
Yes. Well, 2019, I started, so I was going to say, this is kind of like what we talked about. I was kind of playing it small and staying comfortable. So I was like, well, I have some time. I'm going to start a business, just helping some older people with medication management, which is fine. That's a needed service, but I wasn't listening to what I was really being called to do. So
what was the feeling that you were really looking for through starting your functional medicine business?
Freedom. I mean, I feel like that's really what comes to me, is just freedom.
Yeah.
Like freedom to still, I still want to work. I still want to do work that I love and help clients, but I want it to be on my own terms, not dictated, by somebody else.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, did you have more? I didn't want to cut you off.
Well, No, I was just going to say, so then I kind of started going through that process, learning about functional medicine. And then that's when I finally hired a business coach so that I could implement what I was learning into practice because, I had tried it on my own and really wasn't getting to where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that's, as I was studying functional medicine, gut health, as you learn about it, most of the disease in the body can be traced back to gut health. So that seemed like a really great foundational place to start. And then, as we've all seen, as the pandemic continues and things evolve, the mental health crisis is just continuing. It's affecting everyone, including our children. So kind of pairing that with the struggles that I went through as a parent with my son, it really just has set me up to focus on the gut-brain connection, which is what I was going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's a great transition. So tell us about the gut-brain connection and the reset method.
Sure, of course. So today, it may be kind of misleading to say the gut-brain connection because they're really connected in more than just one way. They're connected in several ways. And the first one that probably a lot of us have heard about is through the vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve connects your enteric nervous system, which is your nervous system in your gut, with your brain. And so your gut can send messages to your brain, but your brain can also send messages to your gut. And so this can kind of explain even why some GI symptoms like stomach upset can be associated with mental health conditions like anxiety. So it's very common, especially for children with anxiety, they complain of tummy aches because of, of that connection. And
that was me.
Yes.
That was me as a young child. And I wish I had a mom like you who was like, my parents were just like, just go to school, just do whatever. And I was like, there were so many times that when I was younger that I felt like I had to throw up because it must have been that bad. But at that point in the 90s, people didn't know what to do or that it was even associated. So yeah, you're really speaking to me right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My inner child was like, oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was definitely him, even back to kindergarten, every morning before school, my tummy hurts. And, it can be really difficult as a parent to sort out, are they really sick, like with a tummy virus, or is it their anxiety? I mean, it can be hard to determine. And then on the same hand, the connection goes the other way too. Even GI conditions like Crohn's disease can be associated with depression and anxiety because there's just that's such a strong connection. And then kind of a fun fact for you, the enteric nervous system in your gut actually has more neurons than your spinal cord. So I think we generally think of the spinal cord being, what's sending the messages, but your gut really does a lot of that as well. And then I'm excited. I think the session right after this, Trish is going to talk about how to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Look at this.
It
all worked out.
Yeah, that's going to tie in perfectly. And I'm excited to hear from her about that. And so also we have the endocrine system in our gut. And this is another way that the brain and the gut are connected. So those cells in your gut lining, they produce hormones and neurotransmitters like serotonin. And those are sent to the brain through the vagus nerve, through our circulation, and even through the lymphatic system. And we can have both excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters in our nervous system. And that's why often our gut is called our second brain. And I know I'm talking to pharmacists here, so I can talk about these neurotransmitters. So,
woohoo! Yes.
Yeah. Woo. So our microbiome, all those bacteria that line your gut, it also makes GABA and serotonin, like the precursors for the serotonin. So it's really important for all those neurotransmitters that are regulating your mood. Yeah. Yep. It all makes sense. And then finally, your immune system also is another way that your gut and your brain are connected. So if your gut is really inflamed, it can activate your immune system. And this can allow bacteria, food, even toxins to leak from your gut into the rest of your body, including into your brain. These things that should be staying in your gut, they get out into your body and your body creates an immune reaction to it.
The leaky gut syndrome, right?
Yep, leaky gut, which I know we're going to hear a lot more about that as well. And there's even certain bacteria in your gut that produce really toxic, like lipopolysaccharide endotoxins is what they're called. But those specifically can really drive that inflammation, especially in your brain.
I
So
love
not to
that.
get too technical on this, but definitely stress and inflammation are really tied into this. And if the normal pathway, your body's going to make tryptophan into serotonin. But if you have a lot of these neurotoxic products, your body can actually convert the tryptophan into other components that are more inflammatory. So it's really important to make sure that we're keeping that inflammation down so our body's making serotonin and melatonin, all of our neurotransmitters that we like.
I'm just, this is like a random question, but I'm just thinking about,
Yeah.
so do you ever recommend, like I'm just thinking about it's winter over here. So it sounds like a lot of where everybody is. So I know that, sunlight activates serotonin. So do you ever would you prescribe that, like the LED or the light therapy, or like other ways to
Yes.
amplify naturally?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So, eating foods that can help stimulate tryptophan. The light therapy is great. Exercise can help produce serotonin. One of the things I like to check for the micronutrients as well, because sometimes we don't realize, we kind of forget that a lot of those vitamins are needed, especially the B vitamins. Our body needs that to make serotonin.
Right.
And so if people aren't eating the right foods, they're deficient, it's very common to have a poor diet in this country, unfortunately. And so you might even just be missing, some of the B vitamins you need to convert to serotonin. So yes, absolutely. I think that definitely exercise, eating right, light therapy, those are all definitely good ways to start with.
So as far as the food, I'm so interested in this, for my own selfish reasons too, but so foods that are higher in L-tryptophan, that would be like turkey, like give us some examples. Chicken.
Yes, turkey, chicken, yes, exactly. Your beans and legumes, all those can help. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. And then we kind of, I'm sure somebody's talking as well about the stress axis, but cortisol also plays a big role in this. And cortisol can make your leaky gut worse, but also leaky gut can enhance the stress response. So you can kind of get in this cycle of, stress makes your leaky gut worse, leaky gut makes you have a harder time managing your stress. So stress is another big thing that's really important to address as well with gut health.
Yeah.
So if your gut is healthy and doing what it should be digesting and breaking down your food. It should be synthesizing the vitamins you need for all these cofactors and reactions. And also, it keeps the immune system that your body uses to fight off all these infections. All right, so how do we heal our gut if it's unhealthy? Which unfortunately for a lot of people with our modern lifestyle, they have poor gut health. So things that we can do, my reset method that I created is going to look at removing triggers, things that are making, things that are inflaming your gut, sorry. So if it triggers like stress, food sensitivities are another big trigger, environmental toxins and gut infections, and even medications could be causing inflammation. So kind of looking to see what are things causing inflammation. So addressing your stress is big, trying to use non-toxic products, trying to buy organic produce that doesn't have those toxins on them. So eating whole foods, so avoiding processed foods, sugar, excessive caffeine and alcohol can worsen that stress response. And then making sure you've got plenty of fiber, pre and probiotic foods, and then phytonutrients are really important. They help feed those good bacteria. So phytonutrients produce all the colors in our different fruits and vegetables. So getting a variety of fruits and vegetables helps to get those phytonutrients. And then the S in my reset method is for supplement. So supplementing if there's nutrient deficiencies like vitamin D or vitamin B, magnesium, maybe supporting digestion with some enzymes while the gut's healing, using probiotics. That's something else that can help. And
do you have a go-to line of products that you use, or is it kind of different for like a certain brand?
Yeah, it really depends on the person and what specific things they're looking for.
Okay.
Like if somebody has leaky gut, I have some that I really like for that. If they're really focused on their immune system and strengthening that, we've got some for that. And it's becoming interesting. They're really expanding this field of probiotics. So they're even studying specific strains can help with certain things like weight loss, or there's some psychobiotics out, they're calling them psychobiotics, that can really help to help with that stress response. And so they're really specifically geared to helping people with a stressful life, and even can help with sleep. So it's pretty exciting the direction this is going, especially, you know, as pharmacists, we want to see data research, like, is this really going to help? And there are studies definitely showing improvement.
What do you, I'm sorry, I'm like, I should probably save this. I'm just like really interested. Do you believe in like taking adaptogenic, like ashwagandha? I take that every day. I have a brand from Whole Foods that I use just to help the body with stress. Is that part of like kind of what you would recommend for the supplement part?
Yes, definitely. Adaptogens can help, the vitamins, and even some of the, like one of the probiotics I use, it has some supplements in there combined with it to help with that stress response as well.
Cool.
So, yep, exactly. And then of course, to finish out the reset method, so exercise is important. We know that's important for mood, for stress, even for gut health, it helps. If we're not moving, when our bowels aren't moving, our gut's not having the function it should be. So making sure to get that in. And then the T for the reset method is transforming your life by making these changes, by feeling better, addressing your triggers for inflammation, you can transform your life.
I love it. Victoria is asking, what's reset again?
Okay.
What does it stand for?
The R, so the R is for remove inflammatory triggers. The E is for eat whole and healing foods. The S is for supplement, either nutrients, enzymes, probiotics, depending on your situation. The other E is for exercise, and the T is for transform.
I put it in the chat too. I love that. That's awesome. Cool. Was there anything else about the reset that you wanted to share?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I know we talked about this. It's not along the lines of gut health, but you and I had talked about some of the things, like the 2 or 3 things, like for a takeaway. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think, there's probably 3 things that I kind of came up with that I feel like would be helpful, or things that I've kind of struggled with as well. But not comparing to other people's journey, that's one that comes up for me a lot. But I just need to remember we all have different work or family situations, and you don't know how much work somebody's maybe put in before they got to the point, maybe you're seeing them after they've, been working on this for 8 or 10 years. And then just coming back to, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to have time for my family. I want to do something I love. I want to have flexibility. Because a couple of times I've even got caught up. I'm spending all this time spinning my wheels in my business. And I'm like, wait, the reason I did this was to have freedom, right? And have, control over my time. And so that really goes back to what Rachel talked about with boundaries, like how important those are, especially I feel like as an entrepreneur, to really guard your time.
Right.
And then I think finding your why and really honoring that is so important as well. I know a lot of people say that, but I mean, that's what I did for a long time. I'm like, well, I'm just going to do what I'm comfortable with and not, what I really felt called to do. Mental health, it can be hard to talk about, and it's so unfortunately taboo for a lot of people. And then, I made the excuse, well, it's my son's story. It's not my story, but it affects the whole family. And so, it wasn't until I was finally like, okay, let's pair what I am passionate about and knowing with, what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I think just being flexible is kind of the third point. And I mean, you and Blair and some of the pharmacists who have been an entrepreneur for a while, we can see where you started out at one point, but you kind of changed as things went to fit what was needed. And so just being open to pivoting and changing and seeing what comes available.